My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm an associate real estate broker in the state of Alaska, and today I'm going to be asking the question that you are doubtlessly thinking to yourself, should I move from Florida to Alaska? Now, this is a question I get more frequently than you would think, and I'm going to give you some pros and some cons for you to think about today. By the way, I am actually licensed to sell real estate in the state of Florida as well, so fairly familiar, not super familiar, but fairly familiar with kind of the pros and cons of the state. Before we jump into that though, do make sure you get this video like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And starting today, we are actually going to be starting a new feature on the channel where every episode video like this, we are going to be featuring one of your comments from the comments section. So do make sure you keep those comments coming in and see if we can get you featured on the channel. Now, let's go and jump into today's video. One of the big things right off the bat that you have to remember if you're moving to Alaska is you are really going to get a break from the heat. Maybe too much of a break. You know, if you are someone that's really warm-blooded and you have to have the warmth all the time, or else like your hands really start feeling numb, like your extremities just kind of feel numb, and it gets a little painful even just to go to the grocery store, then that is going to be good. But for most people coming from Florida, the reason they're coming up here is they don't particularly love the heat and they're looking for a break. So you're in luck if that's the camp that you find yourself in. Another really nice thing about moving to Alaska from Florida is it is not nearly as crowded. Like, I have definitely seen the hustle and bustle down in Florida, like the Miamis and West Palm Beach to a little extent. I mean, no, that does not compare anywhere near to like the Orlandos, the Miamis, the Tampas, anywhere like that. But for small town Alaska guy, you know, those areas do kind of seem big. So if you're looking for a place where you can actually just get away from people, then Alaska is going to be a great option. Because I mean, down in Florida, really the beautiful places that you want to be, like on the beach and everywhere else, usually those are going to be pretty populated. And so for that reason, you know, Alaska does kind of start looking better for you. Number 3 is that you do not have to worry about hurricanes anymore. That is right. I know this is going to sound like a big surprise, and believe me, I'm not pulling your leg. There are no hurricanes in Alaska. And this kind of goes hand in hand with that, but the next one is that the insurance is just not nearly as high in Alaska as it's going to be down in Florida. I mean, I know down in Florida, there are whole insurance companies, big swaths of the insurance industry that are just saying, we're not insuring anything in Florida anymore, just because hurricanes come through and just completely level an entire area. Like, we're tired of doing that, so we're pulling out. You can't force us to stay here, and that's obviously increasing the insurance rates for every homeowner that's down there. But that's, for the most part, not going to be something you run into. You can kind of get some earthquake insurance up here. Majority of people don't have it, and it's not a requirement. You know, we can talk more about that in another video, but the big bottom line, insurance is going to be cheaper and no hurricanes up here. Fifth thing that I would tell you that is really going to be a big benefit to you if you're moving from Florida is that there is really not much of a flex culture here, which does mean that you do have a much slower pace of life, and there's really less of a feeling that you're keeping up with the Joneses. If anything, I don't know, this might manifest itself more in the way of just trying to make sure that you have as many Alaska toys as your neighbor does. But for the most part, flex culture is just really not going to be something that Alaskans really participate very much in. The 6th reason that you should move to Alaska instead of staying in Florida is that there are much fewer insects in Alaska as compared to Florida. Now, I say fewer because mosquitoes are still here, okay? So I'm not snake oil salesman over here telling you that there are absolutely no mosquitoes here or insects or anything like that. But this is also just not the environment where there are going to be a whole lot of insects. You're going to have mosquitoes in certain areas, but for the most part, you can be pretty strategic on the places that you go during certain times of the year. And for the most part, you'll be able to avoid them, or if you do run into them, I mean, put on some good mosquito repellent. You're probably not going to have much of an issue. And if you're used to more of Florida standard of mosquitoes and insects, they're probably just not even going to faze you. Reason number 7 that you should move from Florida to Alaska is that there are no snakes up here in Alaska. And if you're someone who just really does not like snakes, and reptiles really aren't your thing either, pretty much anything cold-blooded, then Alaska is really going to be a great place for you. Just being able to know I can walk out on the grass or some tall grass and not worry about there being any kind of snakes hiding like in the grass, just slithering around, waiting for me to step on them. That is going to be a great peace of mind, and it's going to be something that's going to be a big benefit to you. So yeah, definitely chalk that one up on the pro column. All right, I sure hope I am not the one that is telling you something that you never knew before, but there is in fact a big stereotype about weird things happening in Florida. Like if something weird is going to happen in the United States, it is going to be in Florida, and it's just kind of accepted on social media that, oh, this happened. Oh, that's crazy. Where was it at? Oh, it was Florida. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. The Florida man stereotype is very real out there. So if you were moving to Alaska, congratulations. It took moving across the entire continent to do it, but you finally escaped the Florida man stereotype. Reason number 9 you should move to Alaska instead of staying in Florida is that there are no toll roads in Alaska. And I know everybody probably just decided they were moving here just based off of that, but that is correct. There are currently no toll roads in Alaska, and as far as I can tell, there's really no talk of adding any toll roads in anytime soon. Now, that does not mean that our roads are necessarily easy come and easy go frequently all the time, because our roads are constantly under construction just with the environment and everything that we have going on up here. But at least you're not having to pay like an extra couple $100 a year to use the toll roads. So yeah, congratulations. That's another big pro in your column here. All right, the last thing I'm going to offer here as a pro for moving to Alaska, and keep in mind, this aren't all the pros I have. These are just the ones I can come up with off the top of my head. But that is, what you are used to as far as traffic is going to make you absolutely stand out up here when Alaskans start complaining about commuting. Because what you are used to with commuting is probably significantly further and a lot more stress-filled than what most Alaskans are accustomed to. For us, driving about 40-50 minutes one way for on a highway speed most of the time, so not even bumper to bumper traffic, is that's going to be more or less kind of the norm. We really don't like to go too much further than that, but a lot of you who are coming from these larger metropolitan areas where there are lots of people are probably accustomed to having a lot more bumper to bumper traffic commuting, and just having a whole lot more stress that goes into it than just hopping onto the highway and driving about 65-70 miles per hour for about 30-40 minutes. So compared to what you're used to, the commuting here is going to be an absolute joke. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break here real quick. For those who've been watching for a little bit, you do know that I host a podcast called the Alaskan Journey podcast, where I interview people who have recently moved to Alaska and kind of tell their story and kind of give them any tips and tricks that they have about moving to Alaska. So do make sure you go check that out. As you probably noticed, I've kind of slacked off the past couple weeks and bringing that weekly just because between you and me, I flew to Switzerland just a little bit ago and actually proposed to my girlfriend. We're engaged now, but yay, confetti, all the good stuff. But that does mean I've been a little distracted and haven't been able to get the podcast episodes rolling. So that is going to be coming in the future. I am not neglecting you. Now, one thing that we're also going to be doing differently from now on is I'm going to be answering your question from the comment section. And we actually have one I'm going to feature today. I'm not going to try reading the name, but let me go and put this up here on the screen. So this comment is, how about the safety of the place and crime rates? I've read that Anchorage is a dangerous place to live, and it is way above the national average, especially on SA crime rates. So the way that I would answer that, how everybody is going to define safety and what it is that they accept as being a safe place to live, is going to be based upon their experiences, and that's really not something that I can define for consumers. There's actually very specific rules saying that as a real estate professional, I'm not allowed to steer people into or out of certain areas. So the best thing I can tell you, go check out the crime maps, make sure you're comfortable with whatever area it is that you're looking at. In this case, it's Anchorage, but this could apply to anywhere, and really make sure that you're comfortable with the area that you're considering before you actually decide to move there, whether that be purchasing, renting, or really whatever. So that's how I would answer that, and let's go and finish up today's video. All right, now let's talk about the reasons why you should not move to Alaska from Florida. And probably one of the biggest reasons right up front is your relationship with beaches and the water is never going to be the same as what it was down in Florida if you move to Alaska. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. We really don't have much going as far as beaches up here in Alaska. Maybe Surfers Beach over on Kodiak Island, but that's really just nice because it's, somewhat sandy and it's not going to be rocks that absolutely rip your feet to shreds. And that's my definition of a good beach in Alaska. So you're not really going to be getting that warmth. You're really not going to have that much of that beach culture. And the waters, I wouldn't recommend jumping in too frequently, honestly. Even if you find a lake during the summertime, there still are leeches and other little critters in the water that you probably like, just insects, parasites, stuff like that, that you really have to watch out for. So just something to be aware of. I know we're not worried about sharks, but sharks aren't the only show in town. The second thing to really be aware of if you are moving to Alaska from Florida is there's no real entry level for boating culture here in Alaska. Maybe to a certain extent on some rivers and maybe some lakes and stuff like that. But if you are coming from a culture in Florida where just every other person, it seems, has some kind of an ocean-going vessel, and there's really just kind of this culture of being able to get out on the water and enjoy yourself, and pretty low threshold and all that. That is just not the norm up here in Alaska. We have a pretty small window of the year in which we can go out onto the water, and even if you have an ocean-going vessel, it's going to be a little bit of a bumpier ride than what you're going to have in most of the waters in Florida. So if you are looking at jumping into that up here, just know that's a completely different world. I'm not much of a boater myself, so I'm going to trust that you really appreciate the distinctions between the two of them, but just something to be aware of. Third reason you shouldn't move to Alaska from Florida is that you're kind of trading sharks and whatever critters else you have in the water. The jellyfish, story about that for another time. Ask me about that. But you're going to be trading sharks for moose and bear. Now, for the most part, I kind of prefer the sharks almost to a certain extent, because there's not going to be a shark that just shows up in my neighborhood uninvited and I'm going to go and see it rooting through my trash at 3 o'clock in the morning. So sharks are easier to avoid, but also for the most part, moose and bear are going to be pretty easy to avoid, and they're just not really going to want to mess with you very much either. Like, as long as you're being loud and making sure that you are not surprising moose or bear, like, they're usually just not going to be a concern. But also there are fatalities involving moose and bear, so do make sure that you're having good situational awareness when you do get up here. Option number 4, this should not come as really any big surprise, but tanning is going to be a little impossible while you're up here. Well, maybe not impossible, we'll say very challenging, at least to do it year-round. Yeah, I guess if it is year-round, it's going to be next to impossible to do it year-round. But, I mean, tanning beds, all that other stuff, you can get that. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's some health risk to doing tanning beds and all that, so wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But yeah, if you're looking to get a natural tan, that's going to be well nigh impossible up here in Alaska. All right, the 5th reason why you shouldn't move to Alaska from Florida, and this one kind of hurts my heart a little bit, and that is that there are just no theme parks in Alaska. Like, people are going to laugh at you if you show up and you're expecting something like Orlando or Universal Studios or something like that. Like, people are probably going to laugh at you because that is just not the vibe of the tribe. Up here for sure, we just don't have that population base to justify having any kind of big theme parks like that. The biggest thing we'll get is just some seasonal, small local fairs that are come in from time to time, and that's really about it. And this kind of brings me to my next point, and that is that there are really just not going to be, I'll just say it, there's no Disney. Okay, so if you are a big Disney fan, this is going to be kind of a big blow to you. But yeah, there's no Disney up here. And there's nothing I can do to replace that if that's something that's really important to you. Last but not least, there is no nightlife up here really to speak of. Maybe a little bit during the summertime. You can go to some restaurants with some rooftop bars or something like that. But for the most part, there is just not going to be a nightlife in Alaska that's really going to compare to the nightlife that's down in Florida. Because, I mean, the sun goes down in Florida, and that's really where you really want to be outside and getting out and visiting people and everything, just because, you know, the air is incredibly awesome. It's cool. And everyone's just kind of relaxing after the hot day. So, you know, pretty much kiss that goodbye for the most part, because even in the summertime where it might be that cool at that time of day, it's still going to be bright, even at about 2 o'clock in the morning. So this is going to be my video talking about whether or not you should move to Florida or move to Alaska from Florida. So, you know, what's the verdict? Should you or should you not? Yeah, it's going to be something only you can decide. If you have more questions about Alaska, do feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.